So many years had passed, and now that Vivian was finally 25th years old, the preparations for her marriage commenced. Vivian was taught everything so that and she would be the perfect wife that Kirito needed. 3 days after Vivian turned 25th, the Garnete family received the phone call. Kirito was coming to meet her. It was a Friday morning, and the preparations to welcome the Yomi family were full in bloom. Dahlia, Vivian's younger siblings, was getting dressed up while Mrs. Granete was cleaning up the living room. Where is Vivian? She asked Delia, probably sitting or probably still sleeping up. Delia replied as she looked into the mirror while combing her hair. What? Mrs. Granite kept the mop aside and rushed upstairs to Vivian's rooms. It was sultry like every German mornings. Mrs. Granite was covered with dust and perspiration as she walked through the small stairs and opened the door to the cramped room. All the clothes were thrown on the floor and the windows was blocked with books. Mrs. Granite shook her head as she kept the books on the table aside and opened the curtains. The sun rays penetrated to the room, filling it with the cups of light. Vivian! Mrs. Granite turned towards a small bed. Are you still having a cater? She picked up the clothes from the floor, assuming that they were to be the washed. The sun is on the head already. Even Delia is up. Get up now. The blanket twirled and a pink head popped up from above. Mon, mama. Mon means it's like good morning in formal German. Kirito is to visit today. Do you want to look like an Asi? Go take a bath and dress up, Mrs. Granete ordered. Asi comes from a low income area. Basically, it's type of like meant uneducated. Vivian threw the blanket aside and lay on the bed. She had blue eyes and pink hair with a tint of golden in them. Her skin was semitone of pink, orange, and golden, with the golden being the more dominant of them all. She was dressed up in a black brasseries and pink underwear. How many times have I told you not to sleep naked? How curse! Mrs. Granite threw a shirt towards her. It's very uncomfortable to sleep with clothes on. Vivian got up and scratched her head. Get up now. You know the Hiomi family is coming from the costumes today, right? You have your wedding next month, Mrs. Granitis shouted and left the untidy room. Vivian started at the ring in her fingers and smiled. Kirito is coming. Vivian, go, get Betty from the hills and take a bath, Delia shouted from downstairs. Vivian got up from the bed and scratched her body. She looked in wardrobe and took out a standard German frock and a hat. She kept the frock inside a basket with a towel and a comb and some makeup with it. She donned a traditional German frock, her everyday wear. Mom, I'm going to get Betty, she shouted as she wore her Drendel shoes and walked out of the house. Wait, why did you let her go? She needs to get ready, Mrs. Granete shouted at Delia. Mom, she needs to get Betty. Couldn't you do it? I loathe the cows. Loath means dislike. Its morning sun shone ahead just in the hills. Vivian walked through the crowd with her basket in her hand. Mon Vivian! Mr. Jacknow greeted her as he stood outside the town pub with a drink in his hand. His wife stood beside him with a loaf of bread in her basket. Mon! Vivian smiled. Going to the get Betty? Huh? He asked. Yes, I heard your fancy is coming today, Mrs. Jacknow said. Yes, I'm getting married next month. Let's grab a drink in that case. Get some beer, he shouted. Vivian laughed. This evening then, not right now. Vivian ran towards the hill. She walked into the vegetation and found Betty, her cow, gazing in the fields of grass spread across the hills. Betty, let's go wash up. Then we'll go home. Vivian hugged her cow and Betty simply meow, meow, mowed. They walked to the pond and Betty made her way into the cold water. Vivian kept her basket in the bushes and kept her hat over it. She removed her shoe and jumped into the water. She sang a song as she played with her cow in the water. She rubbed the lotus petals on her skin as it was a special day. After she was done bathing, she changed into the red frock as Betty covered her up. She combed her hair that reaches till her knee. She applied some lipsticks and some powder. There, we are ready for Kirito. Vivian tied a bow around Betty's neck and hugged her. See, Betty, I'm so big now. Kirito is finally here. It's all like the magical dream. Betty mowed again like bong, and Vivian chuckled. She looked into the Betty's blue eyes. Let's go home now. We might be late. They both walked back downtown from the hill. When she reached her house, she saw her mother standing at the door. Mama, I got Betty. Vivian smiled. Vivian, Mr. Granate shouted. Careful, make sure her voice wasn't loud. Good things, you're already dressed. How do I look? Vivian asked as she held her frock. Beautiful, right? Yes, indeed. Mrs. Granate smiled and quickly went inside the kitchen. Vivian walked into the vendor where Delia stood. She was peeping through the doors. Oh my god, he's handsome, Delia squealed. Vivian looked at Delia. She was slowly walked towards her and peeped inside the drawing room. She could see through the open door a young man of her about her age, dressed in a black suit and leather boots, sat on the savvy and worn out sofa with other two people, maybe his parents. Delia went up to help her mother. Vivian could look at Kirito. He was so big now, all these years seemed worth the wait. She could feel her chest tightening as the air passing in her out of her lungs. She looked at him as he was only the person she had ever known, and she wanted to know him more. She didn't know what caused him to turn, but he did, and their eyes met. They looked at each other for a while, as they had learned about each other already, just through their eyes. He smiled and waved at her. She quickly looked away. Delia suddenly tapped her shoulder and Vivian flinched. Go inside. Father is calling you. But I'm not emotionally prepared. Vivian was red, already so red. Delia crossed her arms and glared at her. Vivian took a deep breath and opened the door. She looked everywhere but at Kirito, and he didn't look anywhere but her. This is my daughter, Mr. Graneth introduced to her to Kirito. Vivian. Mr. Hiomi got up from the sofa. How are you, my dear? I'm good, uncle. Vivian looked at the floor. You can call me Dad, Mr. Hiomi said. Yes, Dad. Ah, you sigh, Mr. Hiomi laughed. Why don't you kids talk to each other for a while? I need to chat with Lucas too, he proposed. Alright, Greta got up from the sofa. Vivian, why don't you take him to your room? There you can talk without any disturbance, Mr. Hiomi suggested. Yes, Dad, Vivian turned away. Please follow me, she said to Kirito, and both of them walked to her room on the first floor. She opened the door only to remind herself how messy her room was, with the books and clothes thrown everywhere. My cow did this. It's not like this. She started to picking up her every stuff quickly. It's okay. My dog has eaten hundreds of homework assignments too. Kirito leaned and started picking up the books thrown on the floor. His finger touched her ears and she leaped back, giving a tiny shriek. Please sit on that sofa for now, she said as she clenched her eyes. I'll do it myself, sure. He sat on the sofa and a farting sound covered the room. He quickly got up and saw a pillow. Sorry, that's my toy pillow. But I swear it wasn't there to embarrass you. She snatched the pillow from him. This is quite interesting room. He looked around. She stood before him and he stared at her. Why don't you take a seat? He patted his shoulder on the sofa. You mean sit beside you? She asked. Yes, he smiled. She quietly sat beside him and looked at the wooden floor. While twisting her feet, there was a moment of silence until Kirito asked what her hobbies were. I can sleep for 24 hours, Vivian said. What am I saying, you mischief child? Kirito laughed. That's nice. I I don't have any hobbies, Kirito said. Did you especially learn Germany? Vivian asked. Yes, to talk to you, Kirito said. I learned Japanese too, Vivian said. That's amazing. Now we can converse in both languages. Kirito smiled. Vivian nodded and looked at the floor again. Vivian, honestly tell me, do you like me? Because I can promise I'm not what you are used to be. Vivian looked at him. He took a deep breath. Oh, I don't really know each other that well. We really don't know. So I was thinking if you would you like to cancel this engagement? Vivian looked at him with surprise. Did he not like her?